damn thing.
Hello and welcome to the Franchise Tag Podcast with me, your host, Freddie Hall. Back this weekend after a very successful NFL London game. However, I'm not in the brightest of moods because my fantasy team sucks. The Steelers suck. I mean, I had the London games and then me and Byron, George, and Johnny after the game, we walked to go get the bus home. After going, what a great ending to a game. We put the game on my phone and literally within seconds of being at the bus stop, it was a huge play to Gabe Davis, touchdown straight away. And I knew that was just going to be the rest of my day. My fantasy football team is bad. My NFL team, but I'm not feeling very bright about the NFL at the minute. Okay, I'm not feeling that motivated about it all. But the promise of the next London game coming up very soon is cheering me up. I had a fantastic time at the London game just gone. Myself and Byron went to the game as well as George. We actually had bumped into George. Fortunately, we haven't bumped into Johnny just yet because he hasn't been down for the games just yet. But I'm sure that'll happen very soon, very very soon. So lots to talk about today. We'll talk about the NFL London games to begin with. Byron, me and you went together. Not necessarily the most interesting game. But not the Aaron Rodgers debut in London that everybody wanted.
No, he was very, very much sort of average. He didn't move the ball well at all, I thought. Neither did Aaron Jones. I think they got under 20 first downs in the entire game. It was sort of a three and out game, really. Well, especially for the Packers in the second half, not scoring a point. Not the most exciting, no.
And George, obviously you're in the stadium as well. And as I said, Aaron Rodgers weren't the game to be, but I think he's maybe one of the only players I've ever seen live, other than, I mean, I know I've been going on about Josh Allen seeing him in Miami, but it was in the away game. This very much felt like a Green Bay home game. It was so packed out with Packers fans. There was more Giants fans, I have to admit, towards the start of the game, but I noticed more. But I don't think I've ever experienced a player coming to London and the roof nearly blowing off like it did for Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, I mean, pre-game, when I was sort of making my way to the stadium, the trains were packed with Packers. It basically was a Packers home game. I went to the Giants press conference, post-game press conference afterwards, and heard from Brian Dable, and he basically was like, "Well, it felt like a Packers home game because they had so much support, only for them to get the win." And I don't know if you saw how we celebrated as he left the field. You would have seen that. He was pumped, man. And I don't blame him because really, it pretty much was a Packers home game. Giants fans were there. I think it was about 70 to 30, maybe 60-40 in terms of ratio of fans, Packers to Giants. But yeah, I mean, I the way the fans were, I thought it was going to be an easy, dare I say, easy game for the Packers. But the Giants, they're kind of underrated, man. And that's even without guys like Sterling Shepard, Kadarius Toney, who seems to just be injured all the time, and the ghost of Kenny Golladay. But it's strange because they've got a good young kind of defense who can, not amazing, but they can get the job done. Even when you're up against the 1-2 punch in AJ Dillon and Aaron Jones, Romeo Doubs, wide receiver, Tonyan, and Aaron Rodgers himself. So, like you say, it wasn't as good as the Vikings Saints game. It was great to see Aaron Rodgers in the flesh. I mean, he's wanted to come here for a while. I'm sure a lot of UK fans have wanted to see him, and obviously you heard the roar when he did come out of that tunnel, and it was something to behold. So I'm actually glad I have seen him play live in the flesh.
Trying to feel bad because you said you were trying to get a ticket. Did you end up getting a ticket in the end? You never said anything to us. Like, did you just mysteriously go? And
yeah, boys. I had a bit of a stink. It couldn't come on Sunday, just other sort of circumstances. But I managed to catch the last couple of quarters of the game, and for my
it's the only quarters you needed to see.
Exactly, mate. It looked a great day out. Brilliant second half response from the Giants. They look a really, really solid outfit. I think.
Do you think we're not giving them enough credit? Because we have really got Packers heavy talking to begin with. Do you think the Giants aren't getting enough credit maybe for winning this game?
Absolutely. I think looking at the Giants, it's not overwhelmed with talent. I think there's plenty of holes in this team that the next couple of years, that they need to address. They've had a little bit of a turnover, obviously in coaching and personnel. So it was coming into the season. I was very unsure on what the Giants would look like. Certainly didn't think they were going to be 4-1. Whether this can continue, I'm all for it. I think it seems to be a really good sort of atmosphere that Brian Dable and his coaching staff are sort of instilling in New York. I think from his reaction when walking off at the Spurs Stadium on Saturday summed it all up. There's a lot of energy about this team. Saquon's just on fire. And even Daniel Jones, I think, is stepping up like he did on Sunday. I'm not sure he is the long-term solution in New York. I don't think he's gonna be there in 12 months' time. But yeah, he's still playing with his heart out, and yeah, it's just great to see a team that has suffered for so long performing really well to start the season.
It's a shame now that that is the end of the Tottenham games this year. That is Tottenham done for NFL for the rest of the season. I mean, a fantastic job again done by them. We move on to Wembley in a couple of weeks' time, which again, yeah, me and George were just saying beforehand. I couldn't remember the date. We said, oh, it's not next week, the week after, but it is
Sunday 30th.
2 weeks' time. So it's the 30th, yeah, Sunday 30th, where it's the Jacksonville Jaguars will obviously be the home team with the Denver Broncos coming over as well. That might be a good transition in a minute to talk about a little bit of Russell Wilson out the Broncos. But again, another year, George, done at Tottenham. What a fantastic stadium. Do you think, I said it to Byron at the game, I would rather now they do all 3 games at Tottenham. I think it's just, the stadium's a bit smaller than Wembley. The pitch is way better. I admit the outside entertainment stuff is not as good as Wembley because it is built to have the fan parks, I suppose. But the fans themselves create the part. I didn't go around the back of the stadium this year, which I got told had more going on. Do you think now that there is that sort of transition where we are going to maybe just move into Tottenham permanently?
I think naturally, maybe. I mean, the NFL or parts of the NFL paid for sort of roughly half of that stadium in the first place. So it's going to be used at least twice every single year. But really, I know Wembley's a bit further away, but I think I prefer Wembley. Just
really?
Because, the stadium is great in terms of Tottenham now. The stadium is great. You can't deny that. It's got a retractable field. It's the only kind of NFL purpose-built kind of design stadium in the country, right?
It's the only NFL purpose-built NFL stadium in the world. Outside of
there you go.
Yeah.
But for me, I'm a big fan of tailgate kind of stuff and pre-game and getting the hype, because an NFL game, if you watch it anywhere else, if you watch it in the States, it's a whole kind of day. It's not just you go to the game and that's it. I'm yet to do it, but I've seen it many times. And you've obviously been to the crazy, was it the Bills and the Miami Dolphins game recently? And it's meant to be, it's like not a celebration, but it is pretty much a whole day of, whatever entertainment in the morning, crazy tailgates for your teams outside the stadium. And even I went to the Notre Dame and Army, I think, game years ago in Dublin at the Aviva Stadium, which is what they do every few years. And we walked about, I don't know, maybe half an hour toward the stadium, but it was a massive tailgate from where we were all the way to the game. And it's so much fun. There's so much going on. And I think you get a little bit more of that at Wembley because of the design of the stadium and the design of the area. I mean, you talk about getting home after the game. There's only one station outside Tottenham, and it's White Hart Lane, and it's one platform. It's incredibly, it gets very hectic. It gets very busy very quickly, and it takes a long time to get back. And I think a lot of people will probably say that's the one downside to the stadium being where it is. If you could take the Tottenham Stadium, pluck it at Wembley, now we're talking. But I don't know. I love the stadium, but I prefer Wembley for its location and the tailgate kind of facilities. That's what I would say.
I have to admit that I'm probably incredibly biased because, Byron, how long did it take us to get home from
it was about half an hour. I think
half an hour, 45 minutes.
That included waiting 15 minutes for the bus.
Yeah. And usually, because there's usually more of us, me and Byron actually didn't drink on Sunday either. Usually we all had a few drinks, a bit drunk. It's a bit more of you. It takes us a while. Whereas we flew home. We flew home back from.
So jealous, man.
That does also influence it as well. But Byron, we look towards the Denver Jags game. A game that I suppose in the offseason everyone was like, wow, here comes Russell Wilson in Denver. They're going to smash the Jags in London. The flip side of it is we know as a fan base for the Jags, they like performing over here. They do very well when they're here, and they always put on a show, no matter against which team they are. They haven't won all the games that have been here, but they've won a large majority, and they've caused some upsets over here. It's shifting this year that a Jags win here won't be an upset. It is. They are looking a lot more dominant. But I know they lost to the Texans at the weekend, which is a bit of a shock result in regards to the trajectory they seem to be on this year. And Denver, obviously, they're using the Colts in a game that was just absolutely ridiculed online. For me, one of the most boring games. Sorry, George, being a Colts fan, but that's the only thing I heard about the game, really. What can we expect from that game coming up on in a couple of weeks' time on the 30th?
Well, you know what? Like you say, the Jags have been sort of a breath of fresh air. They have looked all right. You know, they haven't won every game, but they haven't been blown out as much as I'd expect them to have been. You know, with all the off-season acquisitions, you know, yes, they overpaid for Christian Kirk. They did. We all know that. However, you know, he's working out for them. Same as Zay Jones. Zay Jones is playing well. Trevor Lawrence is looking more like the QB that we saw coming out of college. The defense is holding up. Obviously, they have Josh Allen at defensive end. He's been a stud since he's come into the league. With them, I have been pleasantly surprised by them this year. I really have. They don't seem to be the walkover team that they have been for the past few years. Ever since they made the AFC Championship, since then they have been a team that you go there and you just think, right, well, that's another win for us. They haven't, and especially with how the Broncos are playing at the moment, I think it will be. I think it should be sort of a Jags blowout. I think the Broncos defense haven't been up to scratch, and we all know Russell Wilson this season has not been good at all. I don't know whether it's, you know, new system that he's coming into after however long in Seattle, but, you know, he's not looking like that quarterback that's worth $245 million. He really isn't.
Johnny, well, that's kind of a good transition really into the Denver team, because the excitement is lessened there for the Denver team to come over this year now that we've seen what Russell Wilson has been doing in the system. Is it a case of new system, needs to take time, was never going to hit straight away? Or are you seeing something with Russell Wilson where, you know, was it just in Seattle it worked, or what's going on over at Denver in your opinion?
Yeah, it's a strange one. I think there's been, you know, a host of changes in Denver over the off-season. New coach, plenty of new players as well. And they've really tried to, you know, put together, you know, they've had a fantastic defense. And, you know, offensive weapons for the last few years. These were considered, you know, the likes of Russell Wilson, the likes of Randy Gregory, and having a really offensive-minded head coach come in. These were meant to be, you know, the final blocks of a potential Super Bowl run, and it just really hasn't worked. Russell Wilson has. I don't know. I think it's too early to say that Russell Wilson is, you know, he isn't an elite quarterback. I mean, he at times was superb for the Seahawks during his, you know, over the years there. Obviously, that tailed, I think, a little, you know, towards the end of his career in Seattle. But yeah, the system just doesn't really seem to work, and I'm not sure if that's, you know, Wilson himself. The play calling, I think, looks, you know, really, really poor at times. And, you know, they're racking up injuries like we've mentioned, Javonte Williams, the star running back. He's down. He's a weapon. You know, who now, you know, he's going to be out for quite a while. I'm not sure it is season end. Oh, it is season ending.
It is season ending.
Yeah. So, you know, that's a huge loss for the Broncos offense. But yeah, like Byron said, I have the Jags winning the game when they come over to London. I think Trevor Lawrence is one of his best games. I think last year was his London game. I remember him performing quite well. And I think the Broncos are really sort of under pressure. They're in desperate need of some victories because they really don't look like, you know, challenging at all for the playoff spots, you know, let alone the top end of the AFC West. But, you know, I'm confident in Russell Wilson. I really like the guy who led the Seahawks to their Super Bowl win all those years ago. You know, there have been issues, obviously, with relationship with Pete Carroll. A little bit of scrutiny on that. Perhaps, you know, Carroll has, you know, and Seattle have won the trade at the time being Wilson. But I think it is quite early to say. We are 5 games in, but I think let's wait another 5 games or so. Hopefully they can turn it around because like I said, I'm a big Russell Wilson fan. But yeah, we'll see.
I recall it was the first Jags win of the season was in London last year. So
Yes,
yeah, Trevor Lawrence
was
was incredibly good. I remember being there for that
Last
and
minute
how elated they were. George, do we expect too much of some players? You slot someone like Russell Wilson into a Denver team that at the start of the season, bear in mind, had Melvin Gordon, Javonte Williams, Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, KJ Hamler, a pretty decent O-line, a defense that's young, and they drafted players that we were thinking why they got them, but have really proven themselves to be good. Pat Surtain, bringing in a Bradley Gregory, a fully fit Bradley Chubb at the start of the year, a decent linebacking core, other good. Justin Simmons is now expected to be coming back. I know he was lost at the start of the season. I'm sure they just announced earlier. If I quickly just have a look on my Twitter, that Justin Simmons, Greg Dulcich, and Michael Ojemudia. So I don't know who Greg Dulcich is, but Simmons a safety and Ojemudia is a corner. Both very good players. They're back. Are we expecting too much from a player just to move from one team to another? And it's just they can play the exact same, because we've seen it with Brady, we've seen it with Matt Stafford. They seem to have just fit in really well and just gone straight ahead.
I think the difference here is Russell kind of played how Russell wanted to play at the Seahawks. And you got someone like Nathaniel Hackett who doesn't understand anything about game management or play calling, who's had to go and hire someone from, I think, an ex-Ravens coordinator guy to help him to call plays, and I want to call it clock watch, just so you haven't got the Denver fans to shout out the countdown from 5 to the play clock. But it's very strange. I don't think it's unjustified. Russell Wilson, we know what he's done in the past, so naturally, when you announce that you're signing Russell Wilson, there is going to be that level of hype. It's the same hype that people have expected when Devontae Adams has gone from Green Bay to the Raiders. It's the same hype of Tyreek Hill going from Kansas City to Miami Dolphins. These are big time players, you know. These are like guys who, you know, when you think about the NFL, these are the names that you think about. So I think, as expected, you know, people want to see the big playability, and you mentioned some of those names. I know they lost wide receiver Tim Patrick, I think, early on in the season. I don't even know if I think it was prior to the season. But you still had all those other great receivers, like you mentioned, KJ Hamler, Jeudy, Sutton, the tight ends as well. And I was going to say one of the better 1-2 punches in Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon. Gordon now has fumbling issues, and Javonte is out for the season and longer. So, I mean, not that they are excuses, because they had all those guys at one point, bar Patrick. He just hasn't been the same. It's just I don't know if it's a mechanical thing, or I think it's more the fact that he's not playing in a system that he's used to. It doesn't help that Nathaniel Hackett is a little bit clueless, in my opinion. It is strange, and I think the main thing for me is it's been 5 weeks. The Raiders were 0-3 at one point, but you could see in some games, and particularly last night for those who've watched it, that the Raiders still have something there. You know, they could have won that game if not for whatever happened with Renfro and Adams, for those who have seen the end of that game. But with the Broncos, even against, like, you could say, a vulnerable team like my Colts, they just couldn't do anything. And you haven't seen anything in those 5 weeks that say, all right, maybe, you know, they're just having some growing pains. It's been the same kind of stagnated play for these 5 weeks, which is what I think is leading people to be concerned. And they're in a ridiculous division. That division is horrifically stacked. With names that, you know, I don't even need to mention because everybody knows who they are. I say Kansas City, and, you know, the crowd goes crazy. It's I think, like you guys, I think the Jags win in London. I don't think Russell's just going to sit down and allow it to happen, but I don't know if there's so much, if there's that much they can really do, because the Jags just do everything and the small things right, and it's a little bit long.
Oops, sorry, George, we just lost you on the end bit there, but I'm sure it was. I heard you saying the Broncos were going to be losing to the Jags in London. That's what I thought I heard at the end there. Yeah,
pretty much.
Smashing. That's okay then. So we're all on the same page about that. I mean, Speaking of disappointing teams, I suppose I know that Johnny's got a team that he's sort of disappointed with, but I suppose it's quite a good thing to probably go around the table about. I suppose outside of our own team, and I'm talking to me and George on this one probably. Which team has maybe disappointed you most at the start of this season? I'm going to start with Johnny because I know he's got one lined up for us straight away, and then it gives us a little bit of thinking time about who we've been a bit disappointed about, I suppose.
Yeah, I'll kick us off. So the Cincinnati Bengals are the team that I'm, just a little bit disappointed about. I think there's plenty of time left for them to, turn everything around. But I think coming in to obviously, the success of their postseason run at the end of last season was just so extraordinary. We expected, the Bengals to be, competing and winning games with ease almost, especially with the reinforcements they made to their weaknesses, specifically their offensive line. They spent heavily on new players, pretty much, creating a new offensive line. But yeah, that's just not really improved. I suppose that is the danger when you bring, so many players into a new unit. It does take time for them to gel and get used to playing alongside each other. But Joe Burrow's. He keeps getting sacked. The pressure rate has not dropped from last year, where he was, the most sacked quarterback in the league. It's given far too many turnovers away compared to last year, which is a real concern. And there just seems to be, too much of an emphasis still on Jamar Chase. I know they've had some injuries at wide receiver, but yeah, Jamar he's looking a lot different to his rookie year. And I think that is, an element of injuries and the situations the Bengals are in. But yeah, I was really looking forward to seeing him really push on from that stellar year in 2021. Obviously there's plenty of time to recover that. But yeah, I'm just a little bit concerned, obviously, with Zach Taylor. I think more generally, and the coach sort of set up, I think the play calling looks so much off compared to last year. Which is a real concern for a team that got to the Super Bowl last year and was, aiming to get back. That's the ultimate aim, I think, for this team, is to get back to a Super Bowl. I still think they're a good team. They played very well against the Dolphins a couple of weeks ago. I know they picked up a big win against the Jets as well, my team. Saw them and they look good there. But yeah, it's been a real tough start for Cincy fans, and yeah, I'm a bit concerned for their ambitions for the rest of the season.
Byron, is there a particular team that you've not been so impressed with at the start of this year?
Yeah, it's a bit of an odd one because they haven't done too badly. They've just wildly underwhelmed me, and that is the Chargers this year. I know they're 3-2. But with the acquisitions they made in the off-season, I thought I had them to take the AFC West easily, no problem. They brought in Khalil Mack, JC Jackson, Carl Van Noy. I know Herbert's had some issues with his ribs, but
they've just lost Joey Bosa as well on the other side.
Yeah, I know Keenan Allen's been out injured. But I don't know what it is with them. It just seems like something's not clicking as well as it should be. I know losing your number one wide receiver is going to affect your quarterback and how well you pass the ball, but it's not like they have bad other options. Austin Eckler's great out the backfield. Gerald Everett is a solid tight end. Mike Williams as well. It's a solid roster, and I would have had them a better record and looking like a better team than they do this season. I was expecting them to run away with the division. I know that might be a bit silly because you can't count out the Chiefs, but with the roster that they have and the moves they made this offseason, I thought they'd be doing a lot better than they are now.
Do you think there's a way for them to recover from it?
Yeah, I mean, it could be getting Keenan Allen back. It could be as simple as that. And these defensive players that have been brought in, giving themselves time to get used to playing with each other. Because you look how it happened with the Browns when they brought all these names in a few years ago, it didn't work for them. It could be another situation like that, or it could be as simple as getting Keenan Allen back, taking some of the workload off Mike Williams and Austin Eckler. But time will tell. he's still out at the moment. So, it's ifs and buts, really.
Okay, George, no saying the Colts. I mean, you could say the Steelers if you want. I suppose you could take a dig at my team. But what team have you been a bit disappointed with at the start of this year?
How about this? I'll give 2 honourable mentions. One to the Colts, one to the Steelers, but I'll actually go with the Rams. I think it's an obvious one, really, but it's just so shocking because there was talk about Matthew Stafford's elbow not being too healthy before the start of the season, and he had just finished his rehab program. He had the first game of the season against the Bills, I believe, and he looked awful, as did their entire offense. And it's just continued. Clearly, they're missing the likes of OBJ. Clearly, they're missing the likes of Van Jefferson, who didn't necessarily do too much, but he was another issue for defenses to think about. Now you have neither of those guys, but you have Adam Robinson, who fans were calling for, to give him more touches, more targets. Nothing's really happened. He's had targets. Some he's dropped. I think he dropped a touchdown pass a couple of weeks ago in the end zone. And I really liked Adam Robinson before he went over to the Bears and was ruined by Matt Nagy. But the Rams are a strange one because, yes, they've got Cooper Kupp, and he seems to be the only guy that Stafford wants to look at aside from Higbee, maybe their tight end. They don't have a running game. And Matthew Stafford is almost like one of the kings of play action, especially when you have someone like Cooper Kupp on the other side. Or they've got another guy, I think number 18, Skowronek, who I confuse with Cooper Kupp a lot of the time because they play the same kind of stature, look like they've got same kind of skill set. But you can tell where the issues lie. I think they've lost some guys on that line as well. They brought in Bobby Wagner from the Seahawks, hasn't made that much of a difference. Maybe he's just so much, he's aged quite a bit now. No longer in that Legion of Boom kind of mentality. But yeah, if the Rams don't have a run game, and Cam Akers, who miraculously healed from his Achilles injury in the same season and then came back to playing the Super Bowl, didn't end very well for him. And Darrell Henderson, who has his moments, but you can clearly see that is one of their weak points, and the teams know that. So Cooper Kupp is kind of the only one that they really utilize. If you look at the game against the Cowboys, the Cooper Rush just continues to win. And the Cowboys, the Rams are sitting at 2-3, which is, they talk about the Super Bowl hangover. This is kind of it. Like, you can just see they're not the same team. They don't look great. And I'm wondering whether OBJ potentially coming back around Thanksgiving is the word, whether he does come back to the team or he goes elsewhere. If he does come back to the team, without a doubt, you're going to see a different Matthew Stafford, because now you have a case of pick your poison in terms of Skowronek or Higbee or Adam Robinson, OBJ. Obviously, someone's going to have to miss out if he does return, because you can't feed everybody. But it's just very strange. They can't seem to get things going. They look horrible to watch. I have Stafford in fantasy, and he's been atrocious. He hasn't hit over 15 points, I don't think, once this season. And my other quarterback was Mitch Trubisky, who I then dropped for Teddy Bridgewater, who is now hurt. So it's like, it's not going great. But the Rams, they got a lot of working out to do. I think it's safe to say I don't think they're going to be returning to the Super Bowl this season.
And I have to say, I was hype. I maybe admit I got on the hype train a bit too quickly. But after watching Hard Knocks and seeing what was happening with them, and I said they would be maybe transformed this year, the Lions have disappointed me. Not because I thought they'd be like 5-0. It's just last year there were so many games that they were like 3 points in or 6 points in. And I thought this year that's going to flip the other way for them this year, and it's just not. I still think they could definitely get a winning season. I think there's games that they could definitely win. I still believe that, because I think there really is a culture change there, and I think that it was massive losing Amon-Ra St. Brown and DeAndre Swift last week for them. But if you look at the games, Eagles, they lose by 3 points. They beat the Commanders 36-27, so they got a big win there. Lose the Vikings by 4, lose the Seahawks by 3, and then get blown out by the Patriots. They were awful against Patriots as well. I have seen the highlights of that game. I just thought what makes you become a quote-unquote good team is winning them close games, is moving that needle onto the other side. I still think they can do that. I think having DeAndre Swift and Amon-Ra St. Brown in there is essential for them. I think the row line's held up pretty well. I mean, Jamal Williams is a good number 2 to get in there. He's just not as dynamic as DeAndre Swift. Now, outside of Amon-Ra St. Brown, Reynolds has looked decent. Hockenson hasn't done enough.
DJ Chark.
Yeah, DJ Chark's not really done enough. And I think they've needed certain defensive names to step up a little bit. Hutchinson has been good to begin the season, but it can't be all about your brand new shiny rookie. Everyone on the team's got to step up. And they just haven't taken that next step up yet. I still think they could really push on and get a good few wins, but I wanted to see a bit more this year. But enough of the negativity. Who are we pleasantly surprised by? Who are we quite happy is doing well? Again, Byron, you can't say the Bills because we all knew the Bills were going to be good. And Johnny, I suppose it's allowed to say the Jets, but I mean, one of us is probably going to say the Jets. But I'm going to take that honor away from you from taking it away from Byron. But what team have you been impressed with so far at the start of the year, Johnny?
I mean, I would love to say my Jets because they have been. I think the narrative has just completely changed for Gangrene this year. I think the rookies, by what they came out and said, I think what Brees Hall said, we're good. I think that is legit. I think we've got at the moment the offensive rookie of the year and the defensive rookie of the year. Sauce Gardner's already one of the best cornerbacks in the league, in my opinion, and I think he's formed, one of the best duos in the league with DJ Reed. We absolutely shut down the Dolphins in our secondary on Sunday. We're playing a lot better offensively, which is a huge sign. I know there's been a lot of discussion about our offensive line with the likes of Mekhi Becton's injury and brought in Dwayne Brown. He obviously injured as well. I think he's coming back this week. But on Sunday, we look great again. Elijah Vera Tucker, playing as an emergency left tackle and right tackle over the last couple of weeks, has really stood out for me on that offensive line. I don't think he'll add a pressure at all on Sunday. And that's allowing, Zach Wilson to really progress. So, the really ticking boxes, both on offense, we've added the likes of weapons, Brees Hall, Garrett Wilson, Elijah Moore. These players are really going to play a massive part for the Jets over the next decade. And in defense as well, it's great to see Carl Lawson, Quinnen Williams. That stiff arm to Tyreek Hill on Sunday was absolute highlight for me. I'd love to say the Jets, obviously my team. I think other teams, the Cowboys were one of them. I think when Dak got injured, I was a little bit concerned for them on the back of having a pretty poor off season. It was reported, the likes that lost a lot of players, didn't really bring too many in. For us to come in and win 4 on the bounce, I think is really positive. They're my teams who really stood out as being a bit of a nice surprise, I think, over the last few weeks.
No surprise to this guy. I had the Lions and the Jets going all the way, baby. I was bought in, hype train. I was there all the way. I said all you needed was a dash of sauce, and you got the full bottle. I'm really happy with the Jets in the minute. I agree. I'm happy that they're doing well. I really thought that this could be the next step, and I'm really glad to see Zach Wilson come in and is looking good. I think it's very hard. Ask Lamar Jackson. It's very hard to come in behind Joe Flacco and people to be convinced that you're going to be good after maybe he was performing. But I'm very happy for Zach Wilson that he seems to be performing, and I'm sure there's a lot of old ladies in the New York area that are very happy as well. Byron, what team has impressed you so far this year?
I was going to say the Jets, but that's pretty much been covered. I absolutely love it being a Bills fan because we don't have to worry about the Jets, but now we also don't have to worry about the Dolphins or Patriots either. It's fantastic. We're having a wonderful time at the top. No, I have been incredibly impressed by the Eagles. Obviously, they're 5-0. I liked Hurts last year, but they have really come into their own. This season, it has been. They've been very impressive. I at the moment, if they carry on playing the way they're playing, I know they're 5-0. I do expect them to lose at some point, but I do not think it's a stretch to see them as the NFC champions. The way that if they keep up the way that they're playing at the moment, I know they've had a relatively easy start to the season, opponents wise, but it just doesn't look like anyone can slow down that offense. It really doesn't. Jalen Hurts, he's doing things that you'd expect a 6-7 year QB to do in this league. And obviously bringing in AJ Brown, that's helped him a lot. He was always a fantastic outlet at the Titans, reliable, quick, he's strong. He was a great acquisition, and obviously Miles Sanders has played very well this season as well. It's that Eagles offense that's doing it for him, and that's why I'm quite happy with how they've done. And it's been nice. It's been nice to see the Eagles playing well.
Unfairly, as the host, I get to sort of make the rules, and that was my pick as well, the Eagles. So I'm going to double dip with you on this one. I've always said for a long time, and people have always gone, "Oh, really? Would you think that?" But I honestly did. I thought the Steelers should have drafted Jalen Hurts, not Chase Claypool in the second round. That's what I've said for a very long time.
Saying that
I've said that a lot of times on this pod, and I don't believe that Jalen Hurts would be the same sort of quarterback in Steelers. You know, it depends. What would have happened if he'd gone the Steelers? It could have been completely different. But what I have sort of always kept with him at the Eagles is it's a little bit like Lamar. There's lots you can do with your feet, but that will run out one day. You've got to develop other parts of your game. You've got to get better at other parts of your game. And I wasn't totally convinced Jalen Hurts could do that. I almost saw him as a bit of a bootleg Lamar, not as good as Lamar in the terms of the running. And I was never blown away with any of the talent that they've had on either side of the ball in the last couple of years. But I said the cornerbacks the other week haven't been doing that well with Slay and Bradbury, and someone did politely comment on YouTube saying, you know, you're ridiculous, but you think Slay and Bradbury aren't very good. No, I never said not very good. I just think it's been very silently about their work. I don't think people have noticed. I certainly have not noticed how elite level they've played, because Darius Slay to me has been a player that was good at Troy. He came over and it was going to be the shining guy, but was never really that good. Bradbury was also always decent at the Giants. If he was that decent, why didn't the Giants keep him along? What was going on with that? They've got together a vet, and they're just silently going about their work. They're looking really strong in every single area of the ball. And dare I say it, it's very early, but that's what makes the caliber of a Super Bowl team, is when every phase in your team is playing it keeps progressing to a higher and a higher and a higher level. Obviously, Eagles' massive problems throughout the last 3-4 years has been injury. If they can keep everyone fit, this team could easily hit the NFC Championship. And maybe even the Super Bowl. I don't know about that. I think it's a long way. We could have said the same thing about Arizona last year at this point, because Arizona also 5-0. They went 8-0 in the end. The Eagles could do the exact same thing, go maybe 8-0 and then it drops off. I don't know. But at the minute, they are playing at an exceedingly good level. And Byron is very correct about AJ Brown as well. What a trade that was. What a bold trade that was as well for them. And that's done the world of good. They seem to have cleared out the stock they had, which I was always like, well, why are you keeping him around? They've cleared it. Jalen Rager's gone. Players like that. They've always refreshed their O-line, even though them guys get injured. They've always had that next guy up mentality. Jordan Mailata, who is part of the international program, which a lot of our guys, that's their way into the NFL. People like F.A. Barder, that's how they got there. I mean, these guys have sort of been the next step up guys, but then when they've got to that level, they've remained at that level, and they've been at a very good level. They need to keep it going. It wouldn't shock me if an injury does come to them, because it does seem to happen to the Eagles, unfortunately. But if they can keep this momentum, I think they could win the division. I could see the Cowboys maybe coming back. I'm never confident about the Cowboys' run game at the minute due to Zeke Pollard. I think Pollard's great. I'm not so confident about Zeke. The Eagles seem to be able to win it, and if Jalen just keeps progressing as a thrower and keeping people like Goddard, Smith, Brown all healthy, this team could really push it. And that's going to really please Gareth, who came to the game with us on Sunday, because Adam was a long-standing Eagle hater and then turned into this massive Eagle lover last year. And then I've always just been like partisan, whereas I think there is something going on with Philadelphia here where they've really got it going on. But you got to keep going. You've got to keep progressing. It's a long season. We could be saying something completely different at the end of the year, I suppose. George, to end on you with your team that's most improved, what would you go for? Or a surprise, I suppose.
Yeah. I'm going to go with the Giants, actually.
Okay.
So this is one for Dre, massive Giants fan. Cameron, Sky Sports journalist. I think no one kind of expected. Well, I kind of expected a bit of a surge from the Giants because I follow Saquon Barkley quite a lot, and I see him on all these different podcasts. And his mentality was, I'm shocked at how fans have turned against me because I've been injured and everyone thinks I can't play football anymore. And he was genuinely upset by it, and it was so crazy to see because he is a top tier caliber running back, and I think he might still be number one rushing. It might be Bradley, it might be Chubb now, Nick Chubb. I'm not too sure, but it might be Saquon. And what they're doing without like key pieces of their squad. Kenny Golladay doesn't exist. Sterling Shepard has gone down, non-contact ACL injury. He's out for the season. So you're down to guys like Wan'Dale Robinson, Titan Evan Neal. That's a right tackle, Evan Neal. They don't have guys that you can, Debo. They don't have a Debo. They don't have a Devontae Smith. They don't have those kind of names. Kadarius Toney is someone that I love, but just can't stay healthy. Daniel Bellinger is one of the tight ends who I think he's gone under the radar quite well. But then you look at the quarterback room and you've got Daniel Jones, who isn't going to be the guy moving forward. They didn't pick up his fifth-year option for, I guess, obvious reasons. And he kind of showed out in the game against the Packers. He's got some wheels in him. He can run. He can make things happen. But they're doing all this, and they're sitting at 4-1. And I can't tell you the last time the Giants were 4-1. But if you flip the script and look at their defense, they've got a good defense. They've got a young, hungry sort of hybrid defense. You've got guys like Dexter Lawrence, who's just mauling guys. Leonard Williams as well. Kayvon Thibodeau, who we missed, I think, in the first maybe 3 games or something because he was out injured. He's a wrecking force. He had a good game on Sunday too against the Packers. But again, kind of like how you mentioned the Eagles secondary are going under the radar, so are the Giants. I mean, you say the name New York Giants and you say the name New York Jets and you basically laugh, right? Because they've been trashed over how many years. But even without all of the names that I mentioned due to injury and whatnot, they're still managing to get these wins, and they're 4-1 is crazy. I never thought I'd sit here and say the Giants are 4-1. It just doesn't sound right. So, Brian Daboll has done a great job. Like I said, I went to his press conference and heard everything he had to say, and he talks a good game. He seems like a coach the players can rally for, get behind. Unlike I said this before, but Josh McDaniels of the Raiders, I don't feel like he's a players coach. He's very much like a this is what I want, and there's no compromise sort of thing. I feel like Brian Daboll, he can get the players around him. He can get that huddle going. He's that kind of guy you can rely on, and you go out there and fight for him. So, full credit to the Giants. If they get some names back, or if Kenny Golladay decides to show up, or Kadarius Toney, becomes healthy all of a sudden, and he can join guys like Slayton and Bellinger and start to get things done, and Wan'Dale Robinson, then who knows how far they could go. But I'm pleasantly surprised, and I'm happy for the guys. Really happy for them.
It's actually funny because when me and Byron at the game, we just went off on like a random tangent of chatting, and we were like, who do you think on the field's like a really actually nice guy? Like someone who you could actually be you go, he was so lovely. And Saquon was like the first one we said, we were like, he just comes across so nice. I really,
on the it's called the Pivot podcast with Ryan Clark from ESPN, and I forget the other guys now. Ryan Clark, Fred Taylor, legendary running back for the Jags, and Channing Crowder, who played for the Steelers in Miami, I think. But honestly, if you get a chance, you should watch the episode because Saquon is a great guy. Honestly, like the emotion that he spoke about, how disappointed he was in people sort of not disrespect him, but just, chucking him out the window because he's been injured and he couldn't play. He had a couple of freak injuries over his careers, and you can't help that. And his message was, you just watch me this season. I'm fully fit. I'm coming back for all the smoke. And that's what he's doing. You mentioned people who are nice, who are nice. Dexter Lawrence, he came in for the post-game conference too. The guy's like just a sleeping giant. He just, we see so much aggression and things on the field. We forget these guys are human. They've got families, they've got kids, they've got lifestyles, hobbies. So when you hear them speak and you get that kind of one-to-one, you just think to yourself, geez, like these guys are just like, my uncle down the road, or just a friend. They're really, really cool guys. And I think that's a nice element to see. We speak about NFL players in so many different ways, and we never really talk about the human element. Trash to Matt Ryan, but I'm sure he's a nice guy.
And Barkley is only 60 yards behind Nick Chubb at the minute at the top. But Nick Chubb has one more attempt. So, you know, if Saquon Barkley rips off first attempt 60 yards, he's going to be up there for an hour maybe. And also someone said the game as well was after that big run that I said sort of woke up the Giants a little bit and went like, oh, this could be an interesting game. Was imagine if we'd had 4 years of this, like it would just be totally, it'd be a totally different conversation. And it's sort of the same with Christian McCaffrey as well. It'd be a totally different conversation if we just had 4 full years. I think they've definitely been 3-4 years, haven't they? I think so. If we had full seasons of them, it would be a whole different conversation with a lot of these players. These guys are so elite players like Saquon Barkley and Christian McCaffrey. And I do hope going forward, both guys stay relatively, hopefully injury free, because they're such a pleasure to watch. Like Barkley was a star in that Giants team. That was very evident on Sunday. It was a real pleasure seeing someone like him play. And I don't believe last time I saw Giants play, he played for them, which was a very long time ago. So, but anyway, thank you very much, all three of you, for coming on. I really appreciate you guys being here. And thank you for all the people that said hello to us at the London games. It was really nice catching up with yourself, George, at the London game. And Johnny, we shall hopefully see you at a game one day soon enough. Until then, thank you very much, Brian. Thank you, Johnny. Thank you, George. We'll be back for the fantasy podcast later in the week. Not done any Sunday preview episodes this year because we've just simply been so busy. It's either been games at London or weddings or holidays or all sorts of stuff. So we've got lots of cool stuff coming up. And we'll see you next week. And have a good rest of your week and enjoy.